All right, Buck, here he is, our good buddy Yogi Roth joining us now. Yogs, first of all, I know the two books that you've written. Have you written any more? I mean, I know obviously you've got 5-Star QB, which is the latest and greatest. You've got the Pete Carroll book, which is phenomenal. Have you written any other books? Because you have the books written to books on the shelf ratio right now, I think might be a little skewed. What are we working with here?
Yeah, there's two more. Yeah, I wrote
Oh
one
my
in my
gosh, you've
late
written two
20s.
more?
Yeah, I did a book called From PA to LA, where you'd love this. It was my last year. I had a feeling about my last year on the Pete Carroll staff at SC. And as I looked to like Golden Pat Rule, who you guys know, he's like a
Yeah,
legendary
yeah.
O-line coach, and
Yeah.
even Coach Carroll, I was like, would they have remembered what it was like in Arkansas in the 70s under Lou Holtz? Probably not. So I was like, every night I took 10 minutes and I wrote every night throughout the entire season. What it was like to prep for Ohio State, what was it like for the Texas game, like what it was like to play everybody, and my role, and just the relationships and the whole dynamic of, what was I thought a really special season in 2009. So I ended up writing that book From PA to LA, and then I actually, in the pandemic, when this beautiful set and all these books showed up in my house,
Yes.
because we were all bound to our homes, our oldest son was struggling learning how to read. So I was like, all right, how am I going to help him out here? So we wrote a book together called Finding Free Fun, which was about this little boy
Nice.
named Zane, who's that's
Yeah.
his name,
That's
and it was him trying to find free fun around California. So it was cool. So yeah, check those out if you haven't. A little reading in your training camp tour. There you go.
I know I got 5-Star QB Buck shipped to the house, but some reason the other books
one,
never made it here, man. I don't know. It got lost in the mail.
working on it.
Yeah, what happened there?
That's funny because coming off the heels of 5-Star QB, I want to ask you this because this is unprompted. I was in Miami over the weekend and Tua had just signed his deal, and hearing Tua talk about his journey, all the noise, having to deal with the ups and downs and all those things. So I was able to ask him, I said, Tua, when I met you, you were 16. If you could talk to your 16-year-old self, what would you tell him? And he just talked about, I would say, just stay on the right track. So Yogi, I want to tap into you. There are a lot of Elite 11 alums that are signing these big deals, but you've seen them kind of like sometimes at their lowest moment where they first time they've ever hit adversity. What have you learned from watching all of these guys go on their individual journeys and a bunch of them finding success at the end of it?
Yeah, it's a really cool topic, and how exciting for all of these guys. It's a big part of even like what this book is. Even like every Tuesday this year, we're going to kick out advice from those guys, right? We're going to call it like 5-star advice from the likes of Tua, from the likes of Bo Nix, from the likes of Herbert, all these guys that have, signed these huge deals, but have figured life out along the way because they go through a lot. If you go back to Tua's year, we did a film that year that I was lucky enough to direct, and we called it The It Factory. I'm pretty sure you're in it, and
Yeah.
a bunch. And we wanted to go around the country and ask elite NFL guys, Russell Wilson, elite NFL coaches, Pete Carroll, Ron Rivera, etc. What is that phrase? And what we learned, and this is how we would define it, is the it factor is when you walk in a room, you make everybody feels your presence, and you make them better. And Tua, in my opinion, has had the best it factor I've ever seen in my Elite 11 experience. You saw him at the Nike campus. Like, he walked up there, and this is a guy who's not going to cuss. He's not going to party. He's going to be straight and narrow, but he can relate to anybody. He always had that. But his football journey wasn't, to your point, wasn't linear. When he came to an Elite 11 regional, I mean, it's online. I mean, Trent Dilfer kind of chewed into him a little bit and challenged him. Hey, mechanically, can you elevate your game? And the quote that we've often used at Elite 11 that I would agree with is that the limiting factor in reaching your potential is flawed mechanics. And in high school at 15, 16 years old, he was a little bit flawed. And he went to work. I mean, you could go back and watch that film. It'll give you chills because we have all this footage of him working in the night, literally under like the street lights at these little beaches in Hawaii and these little parking lots. And he came to the Elite 11 finals, a different dude, and came out and ripped it, and on his way to the MVP, of course. But just a special guy that wasn't afraid to grow. And I think in this era, in this book that you guys have referenced and Daniel contributed to, like, guys are afraid sometimes to ask to grow because they're told who they are. They're told what they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to be. Tua was not that. He was wide open. All right, make me better, man. And I'll never forget when we gave him the MVP. I have the chills thinking about it. It was in this beautiful room at Nike's campus. And he knew the growth that he had just in 6 months. I can only imagine what he was like with you after the growth of 6 years it has been, or even longer than that, since the Elite 11 to now signing this massive deal.
Yokes, I want to follow up on what you guys are just talking about there, because we've seen not only that Tua deal, we saw the Jordan Love deal come down. We're waiting on Dak to see what happens there. We've got 5 guys just from that 2020 class alone that have got paid. What, and this is going along the lines of what you're just talking about, the not realizing or recognizing this as an endpoint, but still as a part of the journey. What is the key to that? Because so many guys can look at it and say, get to the NFL is the goal. Okay, accomplish that goal. Now, okay, well, I want to get to that second contract, be taken care of, generational wealth done. But then it's like, okay, now it gets harder. You're making more money on the cap, so there's going to be a little bit less around you now. So being where you are, status quo, is not going to be good enough. What is the key on that growth mindset for these guys to go from there?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably different at different stages, right? Like at 16 is a different answer than at 18, at 22, and then once you get in the NFL. I mean, I can remember this like yesterday with an Elite 11 quarterback back in the day. It was a couple years before Tua. And I walked up to him on campus, and his mom was there, and she was watching him. And she said, my baby's going to get me to the league. On his right arm, he had the NFL logo tattooed. We know quarterbacks, I think, pretty well. You can tell. You can tell what guys have and what they don't early on. And it was going to be a long road. A lot had to change, in my opinion, at that stage for that individual player to find a way to actualize the dream that he and or his family had. Why do I say that? Like, it's not wrong for parents to dream. I dream for my kids. You guys do all the time as well. The challenge is, to me, at that young age, it's your community, especially now. I mean, you're getting broke off. And I'll say this, from coming off of the second straight year at Elite 11, where NIL is a real factor in these players' lives, they're more connected to the present moment than ever before. I thought these last 2 classes would be terrible. I thought it'd be like, oh, here we go, egocentric. Everybody's going to be a narcissist. What is this going to be like? It's already miserable. And no, it was the exact opposite. They were leaning in, seeking tools. So I start with the community of like, what is the community doing to make sure you have these tools in front of you? And all you need now is like good internet, right? You can watch Tom versus Time. You could follow Mike Gervais' podcast. You could listen to you guys. Like, there's a ton there to tap in between the years. So I'd say community one. I think the second part is what I hope happens with this new legislation in college is that you commit to a place. You commit to a place. You guys had Chris Peterson on. I talk to him all the time. Like the number one element of success, and I know you guys ask it in pre-draft, we ask at the Elite 11, is describe a moment when you've had to go through adversity. And now in college, because you could transfer unlimited times and go play, players, I think, are robbing themselves of an experience of not just sticking through tough times, but being committed to the tough time. Like when, Bucky Brooks rips my ass on the field, I can't go in the locker room and be like, I'm out. I have to be like, okay, let's throw down even harder. Like, that is a part that I think is getting lost, because it's easy to dip. It's easy to think you're going to go to another place because you can. So I think in the moment of college, throw down and then evaluate it, put it in the calendar. You're not even thinking about another option until bowl preparation begins or what have you. And then I think in the NFL, it's my last thing in the NFL is just truly competing to, I call it the lonely work. Are you willing to do the boring things longer? Not longer than anyone else, just longer. Jared Goff, perfect example. On that next contract, he does the boring things longer. The film study, the body, taking care of his body, the mental skills, all of those things. So I think those are the 3 stages from high school to college to the pros that I'd recommend.
Buck, real quick, I was going to ask you this, Buck, because this is the analogy that I was just rolling through my head was like, now it's like, I would call it like a Waze quarterback. Like the app, Waze.
Yeah.
It's helps you dodge traffic, helps you get off and avoid any accidents or any turmoil. Like, there wasn't a Waze app back in the day. You had to just kind of work your way through the traffic and navigate your way. You set your course and you stayed on your course. You didn't divert. So that was like that little image that popped in my mind is like, now in society, it's a lot easier for these guys trying to get off the freeway and kind of avoid the traffic.
No, DJ, it's funny you talk about avoiding the traffic. I don't think it's a coincidence that the guys that we've seen sign these big deals, they've all had their adversity happen right in front of everybody, in front of the world to see. And so, Yogi, when you talk to young quarterbacks and those things, what are the things that, I don't know, mentors or coaches can do to help the young generation get ready for what's ahead? Because the adversity is coming, and they have to know that it's not going to be a straight line to being super successful as an NFL quarterback.
Okay, I'm getting comfortable now. This is wheelhouse. I'm a flag football coach. Okay, guys, you know this. I'm a head flag coach in youth sports. So let me start there. I really think that youth sports are a beautiful environment for all of our children to grow and learn from, and parents to probably learn from them. It's also a slippery slope where it can become borderline ridiculous, if not inappropriate. And not from a behavioral standpoint, but from a timing standpoint, from a commitment standpoint, from a joy standpoint. Like, I see more young players who show up at the Elite 11, not necessarily in love with the game, but maybe in love with the game has done for them, which is scholarship, changed their life, and they want to love it. But a lot of that gets robbed because they're a ranking. I tell them now, you're not only wearing a helmet, you're not only a ranking, but now you're a transaction. Like, you're our $1 million quarterback, Dylan Raiola, you're our, whatever it might be. So again, I go back to the mentorship part of this community of, are you helping them identify what matters most? So the theme of Elite 11 this year for you guys was that title, which was Chase What Matters. And I spent a year and a half studying every coach I've ever interviewed. So, you call games and you've got all these notes everywhere. And I was like, all right, let me organize this. And I went into it with a colleague and I was like, let's see if there's a theme. And the theme was the best teams, the best coordinators, the best players, the best organizations do one thing and one thing only, is they chase what matters. So how do they do it? Well, they have clarity around what matters most. So what matters most? Is it the biggest NIL deal? If so, cool, go for it. If it's playing, great, go for it. But whatever it is, identify it. So clarity, then confidence in whatever it is that you say matters most, and then discipline around how you go attack that. And it was really fun. So I would say those things, making sure the young athlete is still enjoying the craft, and then tapping into what matters most. Is it what matters most to you as the mentor? Is it what matters most to them? And go down that road. And it was so fun with 20 quarterbacks, guys, to do this exercise this summer and find out, allow it really to come to the surface, because those guys didn't know what mattered most to them, because they're being told what matters most. Grow your Instagram, make more money, all great things, but they all love to compete and play at a high level. So I would say that's where I would net out.
All right, Yogs, I want to transition a little bit here because, first of all, we need a life update of what's going on in your world, and then that's going to lead to a whole new conversation. But for those that don't know, obviously, Yogs was the face of the Pac-12. Let's be honest, not just the network, the entire conference. So some things have changed, obviously, with that conference. Some things have changed, obviously, with what you'll be doing this fall. So why don't you fill everybody in?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. You guys have been such great supporters of not only the Pac-12 as a league, the players, but you all know, so I love you guys so much, is what goes into allowing something to have success. Pac-12 came off the most successful year in probably our lifetime's history. When you look at the draft and the talent, at least at the very top. And my heart goes out to my 200 plus colleagues that still are searching for work, by no fault of their own. So it was a great league that meant so much to me and still will. I'll support those two schools. I hope they rebuild it or find a new home in every way, shape, or form. But as the league started to take a different shape, I knew I'd have to figure out my next move. So I'm going to be doing two things this fall, and hopefully for a long time. I'll be calling games on the Big Ten Network every weekend. I'll be in their studio shows during the week. And then also, as chaos was kind of happening, I realized all these fan bases, I was doing games last year and even spring football, there's no Big 12 network, right? There's not necessarily places for every team to tell their story. And I've spent 20 years in this league. So as those fans and those schools are looking for options to tell their stories, as I was looking for an option for my next job, I love the West Coast offense and the play Y option. So I created a platform and a new show called Y Option, which is college football through the lens of the West Coast. So every couple days, I'm in your inbox via Substack, a newsletter, video, interviews with players and coaches. Hopefully you two will come on throughout the fall. So it's something I'm really proud of, and taking a little agency in my career. You kind of try to, hopefully you land somewhere, and I'm really grateful to do it, but also wanted to make sure that I continue to serve a fan base that I built a really fun relationship with over the last 20 years. So we'll be throwing down there. So yoption.com. We'll get you a hat right there behind me. We'll get you that one. There you go.
Throw that book in there, by the way.
Yeah.
Can you throw the book in with the hat when that comes?
Yeah. A couple books, a couple hats. But that and the Big Ten. And the Big Ten's fun. Just coming off of media days. I mean, it is a different beast than the SEC. I'm just going to be blunt with you in terms of, you look at, when you see all those logos and you really see from coast to coast. And yes, Rutgers, which I think can win 8 or 9 games this year, to the UW, who was just in the title, to Oregon, who I think can win the title, to SC, Ohio State, Nebraska up and coming. I mean, you sit back and you're like, it kind of feels like a version of the NFL, which
it's got
is
an NFL
really
vibe
cool.
to it.
Yeah, and I'm really stoked, man. The people were amazing. The new coaches, I got to meet all of them. I can't wait when I'm doing your version, man. I'm doing 13 training camp tours. So UW to Oregon to Penn State to Nebraska to Ohio State, Michigan. Let's go, man.
So Yogi, I got to ask you this because you talked about Y option kind of viewing college football from a West Coast lens. Um, let's just talk about the challenge of the teams that were in the pack moving into the Big Ten. A lot of times, from DJ and I's vantage point, when you're working for an NFL team, you build your team to win a division. Well, suddenly those teams that win the Pac-12, they got to build their team to win the Big Ten. How does it change the team building process for those teams that are jumping into a new league?
Yeah, that's going to be the funnest thing I think to figure out, because there's a narrative of like when we were growing up and it was like Kajana Carter and Curtis Enos and that version of the Big Ten, and then there's the Pac-12, right? The version of people think that it's all air raid, and it's not. You go watch and you look at the best teams, whether it was Utah or Oregon or UW, over the course of time, they just played winning football. Like they were built from the inside out to take a run, and now you have an expanded playoff. I think that'll only get heightened. So I don't see teams saying, "Oh, we have to recruit dramatically differently." Even if they're trying, it's not as easy to go do that. I mean, you got to recruit your community, your network, your region. I get it's a national conference, but I still go back to what I learned at SC under Coach Carroll, and I believe it is if you're at SC or UCLA, you recruit Bakersfield to San Diego, and then you leave for first round picks for the most part. Like stay in your home base, because now with NIL, you're just getting leveraged, in my opinion, so often by players out of state, and there's so much pressure within their state, within their collective, to make sure they can pay. So until that revenue sharing model really kicks in, it'll be interesting to track. I think the other thing in the Big Ten that I'm curious about is that they had all these elite defenses last year, and I agree with it. We saw what Michigan was, what Ohio State was. But truth be told, they didn't face Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. or Caleb Williams. I mean, the quarterback play was nowhere near the West Coast. I mean, just at media days, fellas, there were only 5 quarterbacks that showed up, and 3 of them came from the 4 schools from the West Coast. So that means there's a lot of cool space for new faces to emerge. Aiden Childs, Dylan Raiola. I mean, there's a lot of fun guys to talk about, but nobody's that's really established. So I'd be curious, how did the defense deal with the Lincoln Riley offense? How do they deal with Will Stein's offense from Oregon, Jed Fish at UW? Like, I don't know, Eric Bieniemy at UCLA, but I'm not ready to like go down the narrative of it's the most physical league and you have to play 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Like, I think that's a little TBD, and I can't wait to find out.
One of the thoughts that was going through my mind is because that was the talking point, right? Because I think it's the smaller number of schools coming in. So they're viewed as, how are these smaller number of schools going to adjust to the whole of the Big Ten? And all I could think of was, I think it was like one of the early Batman movies with Jack Nicholson as the Joker. And he says, "Wait till they get a load of me." Like I think of like some of these offensive coaches from the pack being like, yeah, we have quarterbacks and receivers and running backs and tight ends. Like they're going to have to adjust to us as well as we're going to have to adjust to them. But one of the things that listening to, and I saw a lot of your coverage from the Big Ten Media Days that I wanted to hit you on, there was a lot of conversation about geography and the travel. And as guys here, on the NFL side of things, it feels a little bit overplayed and overrated to me. And also Bucky and myself having covered the West Coast as scouts, I don't know that people on the East Coast know LA and Pullman are not neighbors. This has been some teams that are used to, it's not a tank of gas conference is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I think there's 2 things to that. When it comes to the geography, I talked to your good friend Joel Klatt and Todd Blackledge at Media Days, and I said, "You've called games in the Midwest. Like, what's the biggest difference?" And they said it's the wind, way more than the weather. So I'd be curious, like at Iowa in November, what that's like for some of these teams or some of these Midwest games. I think overall, when I look at travel, I think of UCLA traveling 22 some thousand miles this season. They got a game in Hawaii, they go to Baton Rouge, and then Indiana is like less than 5,000. So yeah, I don't know if it'll be a thing or not. This is the thing that I do know, and we all know because we live this in college, is that it's different than the NFL. Like, newsflash to some people is that you still do have to go to class. Like, everything just isn't online. Like, you're still like, as all things have changed in college football, the development in between your ears of 18 to 23 has not. And there's still going to be a game where you break up with your girlfriend the night before, or life happens, or like you had to pull an all-nighter, or you're struggling off the field. Like, I just think the veteran element of teams is what will really shine through. So that's why I go to Ohio State and all those guys that spurred the NFL draft to come back. Look at Utah. I think they have 10 sixth-year players, right? 18 starters returning. Like, I think the
Rising's a
veteran
ninth-year
element,
player, so he's
yeah,
not a
seventh,
sixth-year
yeah,
player.
yeah, yeah. But overall, like, I just think that's going to be the thing that carries guys through, because they'll still be upsets. And I don't think the marquee premium games are going to be a letdown. Like, when UW goes to a whiteout at Penn State, it will be epic. But what is it like when they play a really tough Illinois team, right? Or at SC plays a Rutgers team on a Friday at 8 o'clock at the Coliseum in front of who knows how many people will be there. Like, that'll be the scary part, I think, for the new teams and really the old teams, of like getting lulled to sleep a little bit by some of the, the brands that may not be as big as a Michigan or a Michigan State or Ohio State or what have you.
So in thinking about that, Yogi, the expansion, obviously, of the conferences has led to an expanded playoff. What's the most exciting part of an expanded playoff feel? Something that you're looking forward to seeing?
Home games. I thought the coolest thing that the Pac-12 did back in the day with Larry Scott as commissioner was championship game was a home site. I love that, going to Stanford and watching them win it. Well, going down to Arizona State, like wherever the game was, I think it's really cool. I know, why the leagues got rid of that. It was because of just the planning and all the cost around planning a championship type of game in a home stadium in short notice. But I think this will be the coolest thing. Like, can you imagine Happy Valley in like a wild card college football playoff game? I mean, it'll just be insane. Or Notre Dame, what's that going to be like if they're hosting a playoff game? I think that'll be the coolest thing. And then I think just the health of the sport. I've said it for years that I thought the 14 playoff in a Power 5 league at the time was the worst thing that could have happened to the sport. And it was, especially when you look at the inequities of 8 conference games in the SEC with a nothing game in week 11, 9 conference games and rivalry games in week 11 out west or what have you. And I'm glad that at least it's expanded. I still think there should be equity around the schedule. Hopefully that comes to be over the course of the next couple of years, especially if people want more and more TV money, because that's what's driving a lot of the realignment conversation. But I think it's the home games, man. I can't wait to see what Autzen would be like, or the Collie would be like if there was a wild card game. I'd love to expand again, have the first 2 rounds be home games. I know that'll impact the bowls in a big way in the quarterfinals, but I think it would just be awesome and great for the game.
Do you know how juiced I'm going to be when Notre Dame comes to App State in the first round of the playoffs? Oh, I can't. The mountain is going to be rocking, boys. The mountain is going to be on fire as the Fighting Irish come out of the tunnel. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. I cannot wait. Kid Brewer Stadium, Buck. Can you imagine? We got Alabama who's coming off of a 3-loss SEC season.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine how it's going to be rocking and rolling, how excited everyone's going to be to come to App State in the first round of the playoffs. It should be a lot of fun. Can't wait for the TV cameras to be there, all of it. Snow-capped mountains in the background.
Oh, yes. Let's go, baby. Let's go, man. Look, one of the things I wanted to ask you about as well is we've talked about on here before. There's a lot of doom and gloom with NIL and with the portal. And a lot of people point out some of the negatives they don't care about. They don't like it. They want things to go back to the way they were. We are selfish by nature. And as guys who are evaluating players for the NFL, we've maintained that this is going to make our life easier. The more good on good that we see, the easier it is to translate guys to the next level and try and project what they're going to be. I'm curious how, in talking to all those coaches you just got a chance to visit with, have they been able to find the positives as their journey and their schedules just got a whole lot harder?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's easy to complain, to your point, but I think coaches by nature are going to find ways to compete to make it work for them. I think what the challenge is the timing of it. And I hope that's what changes with this new legislation. Is right now there's 2 portal windows. That's where I think coaches are losing their mind, is like, you just finished spring ball, but then you could lose half your roster. Think about that for a second. I mean, think of Utah State. I mean, they had to just fire their coach a couple weeks ago. I'm calling their game against SC week 2. And they just saw one of their better players just leave for better pastures because of the rule of if your coach gets fired or there's a change, I think it's 30 days where you can leave. So I think some of the chaos within that has been a dramatic challenge to coaching staffs. But also, I think it's allowed them to watch teams become even more mature. Like, look at Ohio State. I mean, this thing is loaded, man, in a beautiful way. And they didn't go crazy in the portal, but look who they added in the portal, right? You look at the safety position, the running back position. I mean, it's just bonkers. So, yeah, I think that'll be really fun. I think, I think I net out probably in 2 different lanes on this. Of one, this is the greatest sport in our eyes on planet Earth, right? It's the ultimate team game. And now we're seeing teams just have dramatic star power. So what is that going to do to North Carolina? What is that going to do to
Mhm.
Cal? What is that going to do to, some of these teams that maybe aren't at that level? Like, I'm curious. I'm curious if they win or lose. Like, I'm curious what that would be like. Like, I still think that the scheming in this game still matters at the end of the day. So I'll be curious. Or does it just dramatically separate? Right. And in 5 years or whenever the media rights deal end, like, is it just the upper echelon of these leagues that are the only ones having great success in the playoff, the only ones thriving, everybody else is getting the windfall of cash? Is there another change? I don't think that's great for the game. I really don't. And I think even my college roommate was Larry Fitzgerald. Like, in this era, does he still go to Pitt? Does he stay at
Mm.
Pitt after a freshman year? I'll go a step further. My biggest worry about the whole thing is guys like Jordan Addison, who won the
Yes.
Blitnikoff for Pitt, went to SC. Now, I'm a Pitt guy. You guys know that.
Mm.
Love that place. Played there. What does the fan base think about Jordan Addison? What do the alumni base think about Jordan Addison?
Yeah.
Probably not incredibly well. SC, he had a really good season. He was drafted in the first round, but he didn't win the Blitnikoff. He's
Yeah.
not in your first sentence of best USC receivers since. So where's his home when his career ends? I worry about that for players of, hey, college is still a place that can help you. App State,
Mhm.
Carolina, Pitt, like, it's still a community that can show up for you when you need a job or you need support or you're launching your new show or whatever it may be. So I get a little worried about that. And I think the last thing for coaches is, I think the coaches I've talked to, I don't think they struggle with this, guys, but I think they really have to compete to fall in love with their team and really
Yeah.
get to know guys, because that guy can dip at any point. And I think it's different than it was 5 years ago. And I see, like, Dan Lanning, he's had the team at his house like over 20 times since January. We're in
Mm.
August, right? Like,
How big is
kicking this
this
thing up.
house? Don't bury the lead here.
He's just got a
Jeez,
big
that's
he's just got a
big
big
roster,
backyard.
buddy.
But, like,
Yeah.
the point is, like, you've got to curate fellowship. Like, you have to, like, I've talked to more head coaches around, like, what community events they're doing than scheme 10x,
Mhm.
because you just have to do it. And I commend them for doing it versus just looking at it as a transaction, show for camp, and just plug and play, and away we go.
I like to go to
It's
Lincoln Riley's house, Buck, by the way, if you've seen that one. I'd like to go.
I
If I'm
mean,
a player, I'd be happy to go hang out for a little bit.
I have seen it. And actually, that last little comment and conversation that Yogi brought up kind of brought me to something, because I think you have a unique perspective. You watch Pete Carroll kind of build that thing up to rock star status at SC. And I want to tap into the fact that, like, as an older coach, if Pete Carroll had to come back today, would he be able to be as successful in the midst of the portal and NIL and those things? Could his style of coaching work in today's game?
Oh, yeah, he'd kill it. He'd
Yeah.
absolutely kill it. I think, one, he's got a positive nature to him, as you guys know as well as anybody. Two, I think players just want to see and feel opportunity. He was always about that. Three, he loved the word competing, right? He loved competitive moments. Like, he would want to have, I mean, we kind of had that. We had 5 running backs on the cover of Sports Illustrated in like '08. 5. Like, that doesn't even exist in this era, but he sold them all on, you come here, you can have a chance to be the guy. And if you're the best guy among this group, you're probably going to win the Heisman. You're going to be a
Mhm.
first round pick. So I think he would thrive. I think he'd have to, because the NFL, he'd have to just have people around him to navigate the quote unquote salary cap. Because I think that part just aggravates, I think, coaches, because they're like, man, like, they're giving all these kids all these things that are great in terms of money and resources, but are we taking care of them on the back end? Like, what is the holistic environment like? So I think that would probably be something that he'd have to navigate. I think the parenting thing would be intriguing. I'd love to sit down on one of those recruiting conversations, because you guys know it as well as I, but oftentimes parents come in and it's not just, hey, can you pay my child $100,000 or $500,000? But it's, hey, can I also have a room in that skyrocket, like that
Oh,
amazing complex?
that
Can
would
you
get old
also get
quick.
my cousin into law school? Like, and some places are doing it. So
Mhm.
I think he would probably be annoyed for his first year and then just cut through the BS and be like, all right, this is what we're doing. You want to come ball out in LA? Let's go do it. And that's where I think USC is going to get to. I think this is a foundational year for them with Lincoln Riley, new staff, dramatic turnover there, recruiting high school better. I like the foundation that they have now versus the first 2 years was kind of survive, get good fast. They got really good really fast. And that's kind of hurt them, at least from a perception standpoint, which I think is ridiculous. Like, let this team go play this year, because they could go beat LSU. I can't
Mhm.
wait. I don't know if you guys are going to that one, but in Vegas on a Sunday, Miller Moss, he's gonna score. They're gonna
Mhm.
throw 5 touchdowns. Like, what happens after that? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm so fired up for the college football season to get here. I'm fired up for all that you've got going on, Yogs. It's always a blast when we get a chance to catch up, and I hope we get a chance to see each other, run into each other on the road this year. And I also, just real quick before we let you go, can we get a quick roster preview of our flag squad of what we're looking like this year? I mean,
Yeah,
what are we working with
we're
here?
doing.
It's
How are we doing?
it's a big year for our flag team. Last year, we were playing in an 8-9-year-old league. We
Okay.
allowed
Mm.
8-year-olds.
Do you
This
play
year, we're
against
coming back.
Feldman's team? Do you play against
No,
Bruce's team?
no, he plays down in the beach cities.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I feel like
yeah.
he's playing in all these different leagues, and we're up here
Yeah.
in the
I mean,
city
he's
here in
like the
LA.
Nick Saban of 8 to 10-year-old flag football coaches.
Very
I
serious.
will
Very
say this,
serious.
that
He's running
my
slow
wife
mesh with 8-year-olds.
my wife has clowned me so hard because I'd sit at this desk and do hours of phone calls with Bruce talking about practice plans,
Oh
schemes.
yeah.
She's like, "What are you doing?" Like, I've
Yeah.
got a whole playbook. We're studying
Yeah.
film. But
Oh
I will
yeah.
say that I had such a greater appreciation for play callers. So I was a head coach and I was calling it, guys. I didn't go true
Nice.
C in year
Yeah.
one. I wanted to stay
Yeah.
connected to the guys. But it was a blast, man. I've never had more fun. And I walked into youth sports being the I'll never coach my kid guy. Like, I'll
Mhm.
watch somebody else do it. And then after a couple of years, I was like, nah, I'm gonna coach everything, like everything under the sun. So yeah, we got a shot this year. I think our summers have been full of summer camps and pools and probably a couple too many popsicles. So I'm not sure if we've really gotten after it. But our team,
Okay.
we play everybody. You play every position. It's a holistic environment.
I
And
like
if you see us late in the season, look out. Like, we'll be
I like
dangerous.
that. I like that. Yogi, I like that. So Bruce and I had this conversation because I coached flag for a long time and we won the city a few times. And I told him that I was taping opponents' games. And he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "How you do anything is how you do everything. I'm trying to win." Like,
I
I'm trying
love
to win. Like, I'm preparing so when we go to practice, I can tell them, here are the 3 things that we got to stop. Like, we got to stop these guys. This is what they run. We're gonna
Oh,
do it
tell him the
over and over
crying
and over.
story, Buck. Go ahead. Just tell him
Oh,
the crying story.
so Yogi in the
This is
championship.
what we're dealing with here, Yokes. Don't turn
So
into this guy.
so
Go ahead.
so, so Yogi in the championship game, we were playing a team, and they had this kid who had these pink shoes, and I scouted him out. And so uh we did a thing where we were just gonna play like Marco Polo. So every time the kid ran the huddle, everyone had to point out where he was. Here he is. Where's Waldo? And so we pointed him out every time, and we're running to the ball and we're getting him. Second quarter, the kid just breaks down crying.
Oh,
The
come
kid
on,
breaks
Buck.
down. Hey, look, where's Waldo? Waldo right, Waldo left, and he broke down and he crumbled, and the team
Oh,
fell apart. So
I know
DJ
you
was,
loved him up. I know you loved him up afterwards.
hey, after the game, you go across. Mac Brown taught me, hey, God, look, man, great player. Love what you were doing. Hey, just wasn't your day, but we look forward to watching you. Yada yada yada. Hey guys,
Yokes. I mean, what are we
had some
doing here?
t-shirts. Had some
What are
t-shirts.
we doing?
I don't think we do that. I mean, I would stay after our game to scout the next opponent. My defensive coordinator, he was amazing. James Citron, huge fan, big shout out. Trying to get him come back year 2. Got to throw a little extra in the
Nice.
contract to see if we can get him. But I'll say this: I really believe 2 things. One is I've seen the worst in coaches in flag, the absolute worst. I play in the
Yeah.
NFL league here in
Yeah.
LA, in Venice, in this community up here, and I've seen some really inappropriate things with coaches in terms of. Number one, not playing everybody. I mean, you're 8, 9, 10 years old.
Oh yeah.
Get him
Play
out
everybody in the game. Number one. Number two, the vitriol, I think, from parent to parent is inappropriate. I think number
Crazy.
3, the aggressive nature, I think, from sometimes coaches to player is
Oh
over the
yeah.
top. I mean, you
Yeah.
got to master like the call sheet in front of your mouth and like just cursing in your own mind. Like, you can't
Mhm.
say it out loud. Like, that is a skill set. But I mean it. It's just sad. And then I think the other thing is helmets. Like, they need to be mandatory. Our team was the only team in NFL flag that rocked them. And I think it needs to be a mandatory thing. That's why I'm excited. I'm actually going to call it on your network, NFL Network. I'm calling the Nike Kickoff Classic. Girls flag football
Oh,
Nice.
in late August. Yeah, can't
That's
wait. Andrew Siciliano and I fired up to get up to Nike's campus and get after it.
That is
That's
fantastic.
cool. It should be mandatory in flag because the game is a lot faster and it's far more physical than people would think when you talk about flag. There's a lot of inadvertent contact that takes place. You want to protect the player. So that makes sense.
No, there you go. Hey, at the end of the day, Buck's a champion. You know what I mean, Yokes? He's a champ. We had a kid on my high school team named Bobby Simpson, and when we played one team, it was Marian Catholic, and every time we broke the huddle, because every now and then we put him at tight end, and we'd run a little tight end reverse with him. So every time we broke the huddle, his name was Bobby Simpson. They're Bart, and they're pointing out like he was Bart Simpson every time. And I was like, okay, we can do that with the 17-year-old high school kid, but he took it down a little younger. He just skewed that down a little younger.
Where's Waldo? Where's Waldo? We got to know where he's at. You got to know where the person. KYP, you got to know your personnel.
Okay, so I'm going to put this out on your show because you guys have a huge listenership. But I was literally talking because the Olympics, right? Who isn't watching the Olympics right now? We know what's coming down the pipe here in LA in 2028, flag football. So I'm putting it out there. I want a couple things, guys. I either want to be on the staff of the U.S. team, okay, broadcast it with you two. That'd be a blast. But also, like, my wife's Korean. I'm like, I'll be the head coach in Korea. Like, I'm Jewish. Like, I go be the head coach of the Israeli national team. Like, I want to. So just a PSA, I want to be a head coach, or I want to be part of a staff, or be a part of flag football in LA 2020. I hope you guys are.
The other side.
I want you and Julian Edelman locking arms for the Israeli team and then just getting after it. That's what I want.
I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to see you at the opening ceremony waving a little flag. I can't wait to see you.
I tell my son all the time, I go, dude, you could be like a stud for the Korean national team. Like, you got
the Korean national team has been throwing back shoulders for 6 straight years to get ready for this moment, and Yogs got them ready to rock and roll. That's what I'm thinking, Yogs.
I love it.
But we've gotten off the rails. Hey, you get back on the rails. YOption.com. Whatever you need, guys.
Yes.
You got your college football. Move the sticks. Here we go.
No, that's what we do. We get off the rails once we start telling Bucky's flag football stories. It's all lost.
Hilarious.
That is fantastic. All right, Yokes, you are the best, buddy. Look forward to watching you this fall. Big Ten Network again. Y Option, check that out as well. He is the best. He's Yogi Roth, and Yokes, we'll catch up with you soon down the road. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right, guys. Books and hats are on the way.
Yes.